Okay, well, welcome everyone. My name is Megan, and I am the newest member of the Auggie community. I'm the community manager, and just a reminder that Auggie is the community-powered platform for parents to learn from experts and each other. And we are so glad you're here today. A little note I wanted to bring to your attention. We are currently running a quick user interview initiative, and we would love your input. So it's just a 15-minute chat with our head of product to share your thoughts on your Auggie experience. And as a thank you, you'll get a $10 Amazon gift card, and I will drop his calendar link into the chat if anyone is up for that. So today's event is all about nursery design and transitional spaces in those first few months. And we are so excited to be joined by Naomi, interior designer and founder of Little Crown Interiors. And I'll hand it over to you, Naomi, to tell us a little bit more about yourself. Just a quick heads up, this event is being recorded, and continue to drop your questions in the chat throughout the presentation, and we will go through those. Okay, Naomi.
Yeah, awesome. Hi, everyone. I'm Naomi, and I own Little Crown Interiors. So we are a design studio that specifically focuses on nursery design and children's rooms. And um, I've been around since 2008, which is, I think, 17 or 18 years now, which is insane. So a lot of experience in this space. And this particular presentation, we're going to focus on those first few months, bringing baby home, how to transition, primary bedroom, little mini nurseries, all that stuff. And feel free to ask questions. I'd love to hear from you. And I think I'll just go ahead and get started. Let's see. Okay. So I already said this, but just a quick little bit about me. So my background is in studio art, and I then went to design school. And like I said, I've been focusing on nurseries and kids' rooms, which has just been the best. And a couple years ago, I published a book as well, Your Perfect Nursery, and there's a link to that at the end of this as well. And one quick note, I will be sending a PDF version of this presentation to everybody. So if there's anything that you want to review, you'll be able to do that. And then you'll see links throughout as well for a couple of recommended products that you can look into on the PDF.
And Naomi, we cannot see your presentation currently.
Oh, did it disappear?
I do not see it.
Was it there before though?
It
Because we
was
had
there
it.
before.
Okay,
Let's
hold
try
on.
it time.
I'll stop the share and we'll do it again.
You
Sorry, guys.
guys, you guys chat if you're able to see it, and it's just me.
Okay. One more time. If this doesn't work, then I'll do um, a different method here. Can you
We
see that?
Yes, beautiful.
Okay, I don't know where it went. All right. So we were on this page. Um, so like I said, here you'll see things that are linked like this. So you'll have access to this whole thing later. Okay, good. You can see it?
Yes.
Okay. So setting the foundation is super important. These first few months, there's going to be a lot of transition, a lot of learning habits, and self-care, which is super important. I like to definitely lean into that. And it's not just your life with the baby that's going to change, but there's different things. Your relationship's going to go through a transition, your home, your health, everything is kind of new and different and changing. And I think that that's a really special time. And learning, adapting to not only your own changes and habits, but the babies and your partners, et cetera, caregivers, if you have any coming into the home. And then, of course, physically, I think that this is something that I like to talk about specifically because a lot of people don't really plan for the potential of not being able to do things when the baby comes home, like going up and down stairs or carrying things that are heavy. And preparing for that possibility can be really helpful when the baby actually comes home. Okay, so sleep spaces are, of course, going to be the most important for baby, whether it's a nursery or a bassinet or in your bedroom, etc. And a couple things to keep in mind, again, with the physical state that you may be in. Does your home have stairs? This can come into play if you are doing a bassinet, for example, but you only get one, then you need to, how are you going to get that up and down the stairs? There's some solutions for that. What room is the baby going to be sleeping in for the first few months? So you may not want to have them start out in the nursery, even if you have a beautifully designed nursery. It may not get much use in the first few months. And then, is there a care provider other than yourself in the home, whether that's a family member or hired help? Uh, Considering what they need is also something we'll talk about. So, bassinets and co-sleepers are generally what a lot of people choose to put the baby in for these first 3, 4 months. Um, there's a lot of different types of these, and we'll get into that as well. The primary bedroom is generally where most people put the bassinet. Um, there's a little nook you can put it, or right by the bed if you want to do more of a co-sleeping type of thing. Co-sleeping, I mean a co-sleeper, not co-sleeping in the bed together. But having the type of bassinet that comes right up to the bed can be helpful for middle of the night feedings and things like that. I also like to recommend keeping a second bassinet if you can in your main living space. So especially if you have a 2-story home, because again, if you don't want to be carrying things up and down the stairs, if you have a bassinet in the bedroom and then a bassinet downstairs in the living room, then you can have another spot to put them when you're not up in the bedroom, if that makes sense. Um, and if you do have a care provider, depending on what type you have, like a night care provider, they're going to need a place to sleep potentially. And I see this happen a lot where people don't really figure that out in advance. And then there's kind of a panic, realizing that there's no room for another bed in another room or things like that. So definitely talk to your care providers well in advance and find out what they need and what they prefer, because keeping them happy is definitely going to benefit you. And if they have a specific type of bassinet that they prefer to use when they're caring for the baby, that's also good information for you to have. Doesn't mean you have to get that one, but it's just good to know. Okay, bassinet options. So this can get pretty overwhelming, unfortunately, when you're starting to shop. And there's definitely some main groups that I'll go over. I'm sure you guys have heard of the high-tech versions like the Snoo and the Halo, and these are ones that have some kind of movement, vibration, any tech in them. Some of them have timers, some of them have buttons to make them go up and down. And these can be good, although there are sleep experts who don't love them because of the training aspect, getting a baby trained, being used to this. So do a little research on your own about whether you like that idea. The cons, though, that I see with these is that generally they're very heavy. So it's not something that you can move around easily, especially because a lot of them have to plug in. The snoo especially is super difficult to move. The halo is also really tricky because it's also kind of like at an angle. So getting underneath it to move it is really difficult. And again, if your body is healing, it's going to be even more difficult for you to do. So if you're going to get one of those, keep in mind that it's more or less going to stay where you put it. Um, Mobile bassinets on wheels, I love. These are great, especially for main living areas. So you can see in the image, like number 4, where there's wheels on the bottom of that. So if you're in the living room, you put baby down, but you need to go into the kitchen for a bit, you just pull it, drag it with you. Baby doesn't even wake up. They're generally inexpensive. They're not heavy. They're easy to move. I'm a big fan of these. Um, and then co-sleepers, again, these are the ones that go up against the bed, not for the baby to sleep in the bed. And these can encourage bonding. They're easier for feeding. This is definitely more of a primary bedroom type of bassinet. Um, if you want to borrow a bassinet or get a used one, I highly recommend triple checking all of the safety issues and structural integrity. There should be no damage anywhere because, baby sleep environments are absolutely the most important thing. So you don't want any risk of it, falling or their hand getting stuck somewhere, things like that.
Is there one of these that you would suggest if space is very tight?
So unfortunately, bassinets have to be a certain size
Mhm.
in order to allow enough breathing space around the baby. So they're going to vary for sure, but there's no real such thing as like a teeny tiny one.
Yeah.
Um, Bassinets are going to be small for sure. They're going to be smaller than a crib, but they can't be tiny. Does that make sense?
I had the Halo and I just remember
Mhm.
how large the base was.
The base of it is really big and it's meant so you can kind of shove it under the bed a little bit. That's number 7 for anyone looking. Um, so it's it- but the bassinet itself is more or less a standard size. So
Okay, got
just
it.
pay attention to those measurements when you're shopping and just see if it'll fit where
Mhm.
you need it to go.
Perfect.
Yeah. And the snoo for anyone is number 3 on this chart. That's the big heavy one.
Mhm.
It's also very expensive. All right, so switching over to the nursery. So some people like to have a nursery prepared even if you're going to start the first few months in the bedroom just with a bassinet. So I like to make sure people understand kind of the main essentials. You don't need to go overboard. You don't need to have a fully designer nursery. So I'm just going to talk about the essentials, make sure the safety is understood, and some flexibility for what may come in the future. Okay. Um, so quick note on this. This again comes back to the care providers. Having an additional space for an adult to sleep in the nursery can be really beneficial. So if you're doing this in advance and you're planning your layout, it can be a good thing to just see if you can fit a twin bed or a rollaway bed or something in the nursery, especially just for those first few months if you have someone who might need it.
Mhm.
Safe crib placement is definitely very important. And i- if you're, I know there's a few people in this presentation that are having a second child. If you're planning on sharing a space, both of the cribs need to be in a safe place. So whatever sleeping environment happens, it needs to be safe. So keep the crib away from windows. This is something that I see a lot of confusion about because people think that it's just an earthquake zone thing. And I'm here in California, so of course I do this anyway. But it's definitely not just California, it is anywhere. There's more than earthquakes, there's breaking glass, there's drafts, bright sunlight can be a problem. If possible, I would say just never ever put a crib or bassinet under window. Um, and if you can, keep it away from other pieces as well, because like if you put a chair or a side table right up next to the crib, eventually down the line, it can be a bit of a climbing hazard for an older child who could use that to kind of get themselves out. This is also something that comes into play with shared spaces. So if you can, keep each sleeping environment clear, especially if you've got movers and shakers. And we're going to talk a little bit about monitoring as well. So we'll get to that. Um, and visible from the doorway. So this is just something that if you can, it can be helpful to place the crib or bassinet where you can see it from the door if the door is open. So you don't have to open the door and walk fully into the room to see what's going on. It's just convenient if possible.
You might be touching, oh, well, on the crib
Oh,
with the
yes.
chat is talking about mini cribs
Uh-huh.
that can transition to bigger cribs. Um,
Okay, so there's 2 categories of these. So there's a mini crib, which is just a smaller version of a crib. And then there's what we call all stages cribs, which you've probably seen like the Nest Egg baby
that's what
let up
they're
with
talking about.
you.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, so those are called all stages, and that's where you start with a bassinet and then it transitions into a mini and then a full size, etc.
Okay.
I have many thoughts about these. So they can be really great, but you will need storage space for the extra parts, and there can be a lot of them depending on how many transitions the piece includes. So keep in mind you'll need space for that. Um, and the other thing is if you do go with a crib like the nesting that converts, while it's in the bassinet phase, you won't have any other crib
Mhm.
unless you have a second bassinet. So that works for a lot of people. It's just something to kind of think through what your plan is going to be. Um, but they can be great. Just, I would say the main thing to think about is where you're going to store everything in
That's
the.
what Lily said. She was shocked by the pieces.
Yeah, there's a lot of pieces, and some of them have a mattress included. There's a lot of bulky stuff. And the warranty can kind of go out before you've even transitioned. Personally, I'm a fan of the Baby Leto over the Nest Egg. I think they're built a little bit better, but you know,
Okay. Abby says she really liked the mini crib in their one bedroom apartment before they
mhm.
had their baby in their own room. So that's good to know.
Yes, mini cribs can be great if you're short on space,
Mhm.
and they are generally in between a bassinet size and a crib size, and they will have their own special mattress size as well. So you'll have to pay attention to that too.
Okay, good notes.
Any other questions on that?
No, I think that's good.
Okay. Okay, window treatments. So window treatments themselves are not necessarily what I want to get at here, but it's protection from sun and light. So depending on the room setup, the baby may need protection from one or both of those things. So these are, window treatments are generally the way that that's controlled. Uh, Drapery is a great one because it's generally pretty inexpensive. You can get some blackout curtains. You can even line the ones that you already have. Or you could do a double layer if you want a blackout on the outside and a sheer on the inside. A note with those is just, if possible, keep drapery far enough away from a crib so there's no arms that go and try to reach them through those crib rails. And, Roman shades, roller shades, if you already have these in your home or if you're going to add them, just make sure you check on the cords. Roman shades in particular, those are the ones that are made with kind of fabric pleating. They'll have a cord generally where you use to open and close it, but a lot of people don't realize that the entire back of that shade is covered in cords because it's all sewn in there. So if you flip it upside down, you'll see the back has a bunch of cords. Um, just something to keep, aware of. And if it becomes an issue, if you start seeing your child become curious, maybe take them out, which I know they're expensive, but keep an eye on it. And
Uh,
blind, same thing. Go
we
ahead.
had a question about are there, and I think you said you had links, so you can save it till the end if you need to, but suggested brands for blackout curtains that you like.
Yes, there is one linked here, but the two that I like a lot, Pottery Barn Kids Evelyn is a great, just basic blackout drape, and it's comes in, I don't know, 5 or 6 colors. And Otter Space is another one that's really great for, especially for traveling or for very sensitive babies, because one of the issues with drapery is that even if you have blackout drapes, there's going to be a tiny bit of light leak that can come in through the sides or at the top. So if you have a baby that just cannot have an ounce of light, Otter Space is going to be a great one because they actually kind of tuck in to the window and block out every tiny bit of light.
Great.
Let's see. Okay, blinds. Yes. So same with the Romans, they're just all made with cords everywhere. So just be very cognizant of those. They're going to be fine while the baby can't move, but down the line, it's just something to keep in mind. And down at the bottom here, they do make a product called cleats that you can install it on your window frame to kind of tie up that cord up high. It's not a perfect solution, but it definitely will help. Okay, and then a changing station. Again, this doesn't have to be a fancy dresser. It can literally just be a mat on the floor. But I want to walk you through a couple things here. So you can use any surface. I've had clients use the dresser. I've had them use the bathroom counter. Some people put a pad on the bed or on the floor, whatever ends up feeling the easiest for you. And again, you may have back trouble. You may have issues that, bending down is hard. So just feel that out. And there's a couple types of pads. The one in this photo is a foam changing pad. So it's squishy and then it has a fabric cover. And then there's also these newer ones that are silicone or wipeable. So you don't need a fabric cover, you just kind of wipe them off. These are great, but they can get a little cold. So some babies are a little bit more sensitive to them and they're not as soft, but way less laundry. So that's a pretty big bonus. And then the portable ones, of course, you've probably seen they're just like a little fold up mat that you can keep in a diaper bag or in the trunk of your car. And some people even use those in the home on the ground.
Awesome.
Um, and then diaper pail or some way to throw away diapers. I love a hamper with a lid on it because it allows you to just toss um, laundry in there without having to look at it. And a caddy is great if you do need to do a second changing area somewhere else in the home. Instead of running all the way to the nursery when there's an issue, you can kind of just keep a little caddy in a cabinet or something in the kitchen or living room. All of you, I know with your second or third children, you already know this part. So, okay, monitoring. So, Um, I would say everyone should have a monitor no matter what, because this is going to be one of your main sources for information on your own child. So, learning their habits as early as possible can be really helpful to understand your future needs. So, monitoring is great. There's a few different types. There's the Wi-Fi base, which is the Nanit that's shown in both of these images, either the wall mount or the floor mount. And you can view them on your phone. They have all kinds of fun tech features, and you can add extra cameras. You can view them while you're traveling, all of that stuff. Some people, however, do not feel comfortable with a Wi-Fi monitor. And if that's the case, you can do kind of the old school radio frequency, which is the one that has the physical um, video monitor that you would set down. And they do have a higher range. So if you walk outside with it, it's not going to cut out like your Wi-Fi would. And they have the physical thing, but they do not generally have a phone app. Recently, however, there has been a couple models that do both, which would be the Harbor and the Eufy E21. They're not perfect. So far, I have never seen a monitor that's perfect. Um, but there's certainly options you can look into. The Harbor, I will say, is very expensive, probably the most expensive one I've seen. But it does come with like a cool iPad size camera, and it does both options, and it has a lot of uh, features. So something to look into. But monitors, this note below, paying attention to the baby's habits is so, so important. And some people have a baby that just isn't interested in touching things and pulling things down. And other people, they have the kind of kid who's just desperately crawling up the walls. So understanding those things as soon as you can is really great. Okay, and airflow is another thing that I like to include as kind of an essential in either a nursery or primary nook. I've had a lot of clients who don't fully understand the difference between a humidifier and an air purifier, and if they need one or the other or both. Um, I suggest both. However, they are going to both take up space, especially purifiers. So if you are planning your layout, see if you can plan space for having one in advance, because some of them can be kind of bulky, and it is something that you may need to move around the room as well. So the difference is a humidifier is going to add moisture to the air. So this is helpful for congestion in babies. The downside with humidifiers is that because they're using a lot of water and generally heating it, they can grow mold. So, that's not good. Canopy is one of the better models that has a lot of things designed to not grow mold, and the way that you take it apart and clean it is a lot safer. But also having an air purifier at the same time will help clean out any mold that does get into the air. So purifier, of course, is going to clean the air rather than changing the moisture level, toxins, dust, all the things that end up in our air. The air in the nursery is generally the worst in the entire home because often that door is shut all the time and there's a lot of diapers sitting around in a trash can. If you've ever walked into a nursery and it smells like a nursery, that's not a good thing. So anything you can do to keep that air really clean is going to be great. Um, the Serenity this is the one in the picture. This is my favorite. It's so cool. It's made just for nursery. So it has a noise machine. It has a light built in. It kind of replaces the hatch. There's a really, really high grade purification system in there as well. But you can see it's big and it does take up some space. So, but that's just a great one there. Um,
That's so good to know because I have only brought out humidifiers with sickness. So,
Yeah, so most people don't run the humidifier all the time, and I would
okay,
not suggest doing that.
okay,
That is definitely a doctor question, though, by the way.
yeah, okay.
But if you are running it,
Or if
you
you live in a
also,
drier climate or something like that.
yes, and you can run the purifier at the same time
That's great.
to keep that, yeah. And just clean the humidifiers regularly as well, so they don't grow mold. Okay. All right, and let's talk about storage. So, of course, when you're designing a nursery or planning early on, it's hard to know what you're going to end up with. And flexibility is always key here because things are going to change rapidly. You know, your clothes are this big, and then they're this big, and then they're this big. And same thing with your toys and all of the things that are going to rotate. So, having flexible options for storage is great. Um, I generally suggest avoiding doing a custom build out in your closet at this early stage because, you know, in a year you may have totally different needs in a child's room. You're going to need space for bulky items. So, you know, if you end up with those extra crib parts or, you know, extra stroller, travel items, you're going to need space to put all those things. Modular bins are great, especially for closets. Just keeping things that you can move around. The clear ones are really great, so you can see what's in them. You don't have to go rifling through bins. Inside a nursery, having storage bins with lids, again, it's great because you can just toss things in there and put that lid on and never think about it, especially for quick cleanup. Storage ottomans, I also love. If you're going to have an ottoman anyway, get one with storage inside. It's just another extra little place to keep toys or books. And then shelving on the walls, attached to the walls rather than a standing bookcase. Those can always be great, especially if you're short on floor space. And the dresser, I would say get as large as you can fit because you're going to need the storage. And drawer organizers can help. You can see those in the image. Not everyone needs these, but some people find it helpful, especially the adjustable ones that you can move as your clothing gets larger or the things change. Um, so yes, keep it flexible and you should be good to go there. Storage as a whole, we could talk about that for a long time, but these are the basics. Okay, in the primary nook, if you have space for this, these are just a couple of tips. So again, if you're creating a secondary nursery space, it's going to come down to these same things we've already talked about: the sleep space, safe sleep space, monitoring, and a changing space. So we've already talked about the kind of mini crib bassinet thing and what those differences are. Just keep on all of the safety standards. If it says to, you know, if there's a registration card, fill that out. I like to keep all that information in an envelope, usually comes with an envelope under the crib mattress. So if you do have to change anything down the line, you don't have to go searching for those paperwork, especially with transitioning cribs. Let's see. Monitoring, definitely keep a monitor wherever the baby is sleeping if you can. Again, we've already talked about why. Some monitors, the Nana does this so you can add multiple cameras if you're kind of regularly shifting the space that the baby is sleeping in. And then a changing space. Can be, various options in the nursery, on the floor, etc. We've already talked about the lidded laundry hamper. Clearly, I'm a big fan of those. And then these are just a couple of discounts that I have from a few brands that I like. So the Serenity air purifier is on here and the Otter Space curtains I mentioned. So you'll have access to this. Um, and then I just wanted to kind of follow, end with a few points about me. I just lost all my wording, sorry. So I do virtual design and mini consultations all over the country. So if that's something you're interested in, my contact information will be here. And then lastly, I do have a book, and this is fully comprehensive. So if there's anything design-wise, safety-wise, checklist-wise that you're interested in, it's all in here. So that is available pretty much everywhere, and it's again linked here. Um, so yeah, I'd like to go ahead and answer any further questions. I know it's a lot of information we just talked about. So
If you guys have any questions, I know we answered several throughout. So if you have any questions that are lingering, put them there. One question, how can you keep the space feeling calm and not cluttered?
okay, so this is this is a longer answer, but I try to recommend, especially with first-time parents, don't buy things that you don't need yet. So, for example, I review a lot of registries and I see people who they're having their first baby and they're registering for like toddler plates.
Mhm.
You don't need those yet.
Mhm.
So it's just going to create storage issues. And by the time you need them, there might be something better available. So keep it really simple. And especially when you're first learning the baby's habits, um, you might find that you need things you don't have or you have things you don't need. So try to keep your shopping as minimal as you can, and then you can always fill in as you go.
Mhm.
And then storage again, having organized storage is going to really help if you do have a lot of stuff or too much stuff for the space. Keeping it organized, keeping it regularly cleared out, things like that.
Awesome. Okay, mattress suggestions. I think you had a link for one, right?
There was a link to the Newton in here, so I would say there's a larger conversation here, but the mattress is one of the biggest things I recommend getting non-toxic because the baby's going to be right up against it, their face, for many, many hours. So you want it to be a product that's not off-gassing with toxic chemicals. And there's a lot of brands that are really good with this now. So Naturepedic is great. Avocado is great, although a little pricey. And Newton is a good one. Newton is the kind of the breathable mattress that is also non-toxic. I do have one piece of advice for people who get the Newton, and Newton is so popular. So I always like to tell people uh, one of the selling points is that it's washable. So if you take the cover off and you wash it down in the shower, if it gets some terrible stain, uh, now you have a mattress core that's wet. And if
Mm.
you put a mattress core that's wet, even a little bit, back into a cover, it can create an environment for mold to grow. So if you do wash it, make sure it is 200% dry before you put that cover back on.
Super helpful. Thank you. Okay, I think we've got one more. Best crib sleep configuration for a room sharing situation. Baby and
Mhm.
a toddler who sleeps through the night.
Okay, so congrats on a toddler who sleeps through the night. Um, So this is always going to be a tricky situation because the baby could wake up the toddler. There could be issues with safety if the toddler is getting up in the middle of the night and touching things. So I like to recommend starting with prep on the toddler. So having them understand that their space is going to become shared, and what that means and that these are the things they're allowed to touch at night. These are the things they're not to do. Again, this is difficult, depending on their age as well. But the earlier you can start on that, the better. And you're going to want to make sure that room is safe for the baby. So if your toddler is playing with Legos, um, those can't be in the room anymore because they're too small. They could become a choking hazard. So any of the toys or things that belong to the toddler will need to move out into a different space. Um, and again, explain that to them uh, if you can, if they're old enough. And then again, monitoring is going to be your best friend. So you're going to want to know what's going on in that room. It might be fine. You know, they might sleep together just fine. And if there is an issue, you're going to know about it. And you can kind of work to try and figure out the best situation for them. But it is going to be a transition either
Yeah.
way.
Keep the monitor on.
Yes.
Okay, well, I think those are all the questions. So just wanted to say thank you all so much for being here and to Naomi for sharing such practical and helpful insights. We hope you guys are leaving with some fresh ideas and more confidence in whatever space you're creating. Feel free to continue this conversation in the Augie app and reach out to Naomi. And you can check out more upcoming events and connect with other parents. So thank you, Naomi, so much for your time. And thank you, everyone.